Okay, good morning. I basically want to make a couple of announcements, but hopefully, yeah, I will post it this because it's not a lot of students. The first announcement is that we will start the kind of the physical lectures on Wednesday. It will be the first kind of first lecture in the auditorium. I will continue recording and streaming the lectures, and if the things go smoothly, we will keep doing that in the next sessions. The second announcement is that on Monday, the next Monday, is the International Women's Day. Basically, we will have a special lecture that day. We will cover the topic of United Nations Development Sustainable Development Goals, number 8. We will cover that in the chapter number 12. But given that it's the International Women's Day, we will do something special that day. Probably I will present some statistics about the discrimination in the access to the energy and also some kind of statistics about the workforce in the energy sector. And we will probably play as well a game in the lecture. It's not a game, but a kind of game. Yeah. And the last thing is just tell you thank you so much for your work in this part of the course. I think that all of you have done a great work. I'm very grateful for the work that Gabriel and all of you have done. I think that you have done a very nice work, and I think that we are going to present this. Basically, the Oslo municipality is very interested in this software, and they will attend the final conference, and also the Bergen municipality also contacted me, and probably they will participate as well in the conference. Then we will talk about how to put in value all your work and in that conference. And then I will talk with Gabriel, and we will share our thoughts with you, and of course to coordinate and to put in value all your work and try to disseminate it and to make it useful as well for the society. Then the rest of this hour is for you, and then the next, after the break, we will continue with the lecture. Okay.
Great, Mario, thank you. Before starting this section, I do believe some students might want to share things such as PowerPoint or such. Perhaps we might need your permission in terms of the access for the students to share information later on. The same that you gave me, because I can share. I don't know if the students, perhaps somebody could give me a hint. Do you guys have access to the share screen button?
Looks like we do.
You do already? Okay, so we don't need anything else, looks like. We're clear? Mario, yes, I cannot listen you.
Gabriel, if you want to share simultaneously, so I have to click some button here. But
no, but
it's one by one, it's fine.
It's one by one, yeah. So
then it's fine.
All right, very good. So taking it from Mario's comments, this is very, very good news that at least we have some external audience that so far have taken or at least identify some value from the project we're doing. Meaning that even though we finish the module, I may have to continuing like trimming the design mostly. I mentioned on the last lecture, we already get a domain for including all your websites, meaning that instead of having this long URL, you will have something shorter, nicer, and bolder. And that means that I also need to design a mainstream website, so people like the Oslo municipality and people at Bergen municipality can have like a very nice layout for them to watch. So half of the work is doing the software, the mechanics behind it, but a big part of the work is making it nice so people can buy it. So basically that's what I'm gonna do. And perhaps if you have some ideas, or even if you like to help me out with your own designs on your own software, that's also welcome. with that said, we have today a very special session. Today is like picking up everything we have done so far and a summary of the development of the app. Also, we're going to discuss on the emissions calculations. We have a lengthy assessment as far as I could realize from every group on which one is the best methodology and how they have found the methodology, and there's very interesting insight on that. So without further ado, I'm going to give floor now to somebody on group number 1. If you do prefer, you can share PowerPoint or you can just do it as you wish. You got 15 minutes for presenting us your software.
Sorry, were you talking to us to group 1?
Yes, group number 1, Stephanie.
Yeah, I'm having a little technical issue at the moment, so I was a bit distracted.
Not a problem. So
we might see if PowerPoint wants to maybe open sometime, or otherwise we'll have to figure something out, but maybe some other group can start for now.
Okay, yes.
To do it directly from Google presentation.
Okay, that's fine.
If you don't, so you don't need to download it. I don't know if that works better.
That's fine. If there's somebody from group 2, if that's okay with you, so we can give some time to group number 1 to get their presentation ready.
Yeah, I think we can also start from group 2.
All right.
No problem. I will
Perfect,
share.
Niklas. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I will share my screen, and later Melanie and Solène will also continue.
Very good. We can see you from here.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just short welcome from group 2. We will go through our experiences. Also the up and downs during the process. We'll present in our method, and first I give a short outlook on what we discussed and what we plan to do or what we would like to do. Starting with our experiences, basically our group members told us that the overall experience is positive. I'm really happy with this kind of course and also with this kind of project that we do, because it's just a cool experience to engage with other students to create a product of our own, and also doing quite a complex project, because most of us probably are not so familiar with GitHub and Heroku, for example. So a good way of starting something new, and also people are really happy to work like in international teams, and also getting to know different perspectives on global challenges. So big advantages of this project in this regard. And also one aspect that was mentioned is that it's a nice way to go from the theoretical side to a more practical side of sustainable energy, and just to exploit our knowledge within this app project. And as I already mentioned, I think it's both good for academia and also maybe for future employment, if we are able maybe to use this kind of knowledge in future projects somewhere. One experience that was also mentioned quite often was that it was quite hard at the beginning to organize, because we were not sure which people are really taking the course, which were still in our groups. So that was a little bit confusing in the beginning. We have also identified 6 learning outcomes. One is that the navigation working in cooperation in the applications like GitHub or Heroku is probably one of the most challenging but also interesting ones. And there was mentioned, as already said before, that it could be also helpful for us if we are employed in some companies, and just maybe to understand processes behind such applications. Another thing that was mentioned is refreshing of earlier knowledge in Python. So just getting things in the mind again, and thinking about Python codes and everything like this. And also one big learning outcome I would say is that it's the cooperation and coordination in big groups. What is quite challenging, but I think we managed to do it somehow now, and find in some ways a good way to cooperate. And yeah, also another learning outcome is the process to find the best methodology. Was, I think, for us quite a new way to just identify a new method and to just doing research and judging on different methodologies, trying to find the best one. But we will get back to it a little bit later. And yeah, for the team leaders in each week, I think it was also a good experience to manage a team of students and also motivate them. I think was also challenging to get all people on board, and it's still challenging. And as I mentioned already before in the first slide, the application of theoretical methods to practical apps, it's also one of our identified learning outcomes. If we are talking about ups and downs, we have several aspects on both sides. Having a good system to cooperate and frustration of not having a good system to cooperate is on the up and down side. I think mainly in the beginning, it was really hard for us in our group to find a good system to cooperate, to align between the subgroups, but also within the subgroups. But I think now we managed to somehow do it. On the upside, I will continue now. It's just nice to see how the app develops and that we are now able to fill out or to record our ways, to make entries and to see the diagrams showing our results in the end. And a really good point also in the structure of the course is the breakfast meeting on Monday. So to just summarize the work, seeing what other groups are doing. So I think that's a really good point in the course. Also, again, the point that theory is made relevant. And another aspect that refers to Canvas is the good structure of the course in Canvas. And that was what was mentioned in our group as well. So a lot of good relevant information, and that goes in hand with the last aspect, like helpful tutorials on YouTube that make the process for us quite easy. On the downside, as mentioned, not having a good system to cooperate, is one aspect. And then also the size of groups, I think is a quite big challenge, because it's difficult to feel responsible for the work and also get involved, and it's difficult to, I would say, motivate free riders to participate. And we have also some recommendations, one slide after that one, and we will refer to it a bit later. Also, one point mentioned in our group was that it could be helpful to get more advices in the beginning of maybe how to organize ourselves, what are maybe opportunities to get started, because it was in our group too. I think the first 1.5 weeks maybe quite difficult to just talk to each other, but then we found a way. But would be helpful to have maybe some ideas in the beginning. At this point in time, and one point already mentioned was like people not being engaged in weekly work. It's at some point still a small it's still a problem. So it's hard sometimes to really get all people involved in the work. So and the last aspect is referring to the information. Sometimes because we use a lot of websites, different applications, Canvas, people mention that it's sometimes hard to find the relevant information. But that's something which goes probably also in hand with this kind of project where we just use different platforms. So but it's sometimes for people kind of confusing. Now I will hand over to Melanie, and she will continue with our recommendations.
Yes, so we have thought mainly about 3 practical recommendations to make the group work and the launch of the application works better. So mainly we were thinking about it's a detail maybe, but using group structure in Canvas instead of an Excel file, because maybe we could see easier who are in our group and participating into the course. Then the second recommendation is to maybe reduce the size of the group, maybe with a maximum of 10 students. We think that 10 could be enough to do the work we have each week, and it would be easier to work together. And our third recommendation would be to wait maybe until mid-February to launch the emission app case, so that we know who are participating into the course, and so that it can be easier to get organized. Now I come to the choice of the methodology. So we have chosen to use the UK methodology for application for several reasons, mainly that there are more pros than cons. So the first advantage is that we are sure that it comes from a reliable source, namely the UK government. So this means that it has been reviewed in detail by specialists and scientists. Secondly, we know that this method is actually implemented in the UK, so it's not just theoretical, and also it deals with a lot of with a wide range of means of transport. So it was good for us because we only had to select the ones we were interested in. Yeah, another advantage is that the data are very recent, because they has been updated in 2020, and the methodology inputs were available. And finally, the last pros are that these methods are based on international frameworks and protocol, and also it's basically simple for us to implement at our level. So that's why we chose that method. Then we have also 4 arguments against this method. So the first was, of course, that the calculations are specific to the UK, so it's not specific to Norway. Then another point is that the conversion factors for battery electric vehicles are based on UK electricity conversion factors. So that was also different from Norway. The third point is, of course, that the transport in Norway and UK are different. So we have to do adaptations so that we have an optimal choice of means of transport. And finally, we thought that because the data are from last year, that could maybe have an impact, and they could maybe be biased by the coronavirus situation. So we were thinking about that. Yeah, so that was for the methodology part, and I let the floor to Solène.
Yes, so I will continue the presentation from Noam. So to complete what Melanie said and to answer the question of the week, we thought of other input values we could try to include in our calculations. So first of all, we were considering adding the brain, age, size, and weight of the mean of transport, the number of passengers, since more passengers means lower emissions per person, the car maintenance, how it is driven. We also wanted to include the energy mix of the specific country, because yeah, as we know, energy is produced in very different ways, and it can make a big difference in the amount of CO2 emitted. We also thought about connecting our app to GPS services, and to include not only CO2, but CO2 equivalents in the calculators and the CO2 produced indirectly. So for example, during the manufacturing or disposal of the car. To get all this information, we will use resources from scientific papers, and more specifically for the energy mix, we will get them from the International Energy Agency or other institutions. And then to connect our app to GPS services, We were also thinking about cooperating with service providers. So we said, yeah, for example, map services like Google Maps. Yeah. Yeah, so finally we had some questions. So the first one is quite a broad question. We were just wondering what we should focus on in the next weeks. And then a more specific question about the code behind the app. We wanted to know if you had some recommendation, Gabriel, of DIY or tutorials on YouTube or maybe other websites to learn how to design the changes to our app, because we did some proposals a couple of weeks ago, but we still really don't know how to implement them. And then maybe before you can answer our questions, we can see that the app development team did a good job this week, and you can see that our app is now running well. So yeah, thank you for listening. That's the end of our presentation.
Thank you very much, guys. Very nice presentation. I got to say that I'm thrilled, I'm excited, and I'm very happy with your outcome. You got a question for me at the very end. I guess we can start with that one, and then we can go retrospective with the presentation, right? So you ask if there is any comment related to your app, or things that you can do next week. I have uploaded already today, 2 days ago, a final tutorial that I made a disclaimer. To be honest, it's not like completely necessary, but for us to cover the whole spectrum of the app, I added, and it is related to how to link your app to a shorter URL, meaning how to link your app to a nice .com.org website instead of having this long URL. So that's the final case for it, at least for our course, or the things that we were expecting you to perform. And the other one is like how to do things by yourself, so you can like upgrade your software within the things that you want to. And there are several options. First of all, if you remember, we are working with something called Flask. It's a module for Python. It's very well documented online, though it might have some things that are not very natural to Python. So meaning that even though you know Python, you might have to deviate to some other areas, such as knowing a bit of HTML, knowing a bit of CSS. There are like these languages that I mentioned at the beginning that are more natural to web pages than Python itself. That's one. For the design aspect, Flask do have some examples out there, but I do recommend you, there's a module called Dash on Python as well. And they also have a lot of tutorials online and on Google. And they basically, from there is where I learned how to put things together, and basically on trial and error is how I knew how like to put things together, how to put it in a cell phone and things like that. So that might be like a good practice environment as well. A third one I could mention, and something that honestly I haven't experienced myself, but I want to very soon, is working with Bootstrap. Bootstrap, in one of the tutorials I mentioned that it is this design section that has standards for buttons, for colors, etc., etc. But there's something called Bootstrap Studio that allows you to do things online, like move your website design, layout, and it translates later on a CSS. So what you do later is like you take that CSS and you embed it in your website, and everything like falls together within the standard of Bootstrap. So those are basically the things that I could mention. Other thing, Flask, the advantage of Flask is the following, is that you can develop Flask, the API that I gave you with the whole folder. You can do that offline, meaning like you can do that trial and error stuff offline and see how it develops. I didn't explain that because that I do believe requires you to download another software, things like a Python compiler, so you can like read the app file and stuff. So I decided to put it aside. But just for you to know, you can download the same structure of the whole app, of a whole folder, and then you can run that offline in your own local computer. So you can check out that on Google at Flask. Flask has some examples of how to do that as well. And that's basically my intervention. So I like to open the floor now. Is there questions from the other students related to group 2 outcomes? Mario, would you like to make a question on group 2?
They have done a great work.
Yeah, you're excited as I am, I guess.
Yeah.
I have a question about the chosen method. Is it the same as the standard method already implemented in the app, the Ghg Protocol?
Yeah, it is. It's basically the standard settings, but we want to extend now the means of transport, for example, to go on a deeper level because current values are, I think, standard car or average cars, and we want now to implement like the small, medium, and large cars, for example, same for other means of transport, to get more specific values in the end and better results.
Yeah, I see. Cool.
All right, I do have questions myself. Well, more than that, the comments. I do appreciate very much your recommendations and advices. I already written them down, and certainly are things that we need to improve, at least for next year. You mentioned something about okay, so you got difficulties organizing at the beginning. Can you please extend that one a bit? So I mean, in that you wanted some additional advice, right? Like on how to organize yourself.
Yeah, I think in the beginning it was just like getting this Excel list with, I don't know, 28 people in the beginning in the list, and it was like nobody was really feeling responsible. It was quite difficult to just reach out to the people because, of course, we didn't see us in the lecture, for example, in the university, and probably most of us, didn't know each other before, and I think the group size was just too big to get organized in the beginning, and then was this kind of confusion that some people were directly in the first week team leaders, but they never really attended to the group, and so nothing happened in the first week, for example, because nobody really felt responsible, and the people who were team leaders were not really involved. So it was just like hanging in the air, but I think it would be a great step to have just the smaller groups, as we recommend to you, because then I think it's easier for people to feel responsible, and then we could avoid it. And what was mentioned, or what we thought about this point, to get more advice in the beginning, I think it could be just helpful to give just a short advice where we maybe can meet easily. I don't know, could be like, now with the experience of this year, that you just say, for example, you can just open a Facebook group, try to connect there to communicate in the first week. So of course it's also part of our it's part of our responsibility to continue, or to find a way to work together. But it was, I think, due to the large groups and direct start in the first week, for all of us a bit hard in the beginning.
Very good. Thank you for the advice. Certainly something we take into consideration later on. All right, so we got some time on group 2. Now, is group 1 ready to present?
Gabriel, I propose to have group number 2, then we have a break, and after the break we continue with one more group, then we make a break. And then after the break, we continue with the other
on group 3. Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah, thank you for the additional time.
No, this is important. This is very important part of the course.
All right, so is group 1 or group 3 wanted to present now? You can take it between you guys.
I think group 1 is ready.
All right.
Stephanie?
Yes. Okay, I'll have to. No, that was not me. Okay.
Okay, we can see you now, Stephanie.
Yes. Okay, I hope this works because I'll have to do it via the online version. Just wait for it. Yes. So can you see everything?
I can see at least, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to present the emissions calculator from group 1. Okay, it's lagging for me. Hope that will work out. Yeah, this is what we're going to present. Our approach was a bit different from the other group's approach. So we're first talking you through the different tasks, like what the different steps of the app development were so far. And then we're going to talk about the app development in general in the end a bit more. So starting with task 1 in week 5, that was pretty easy. That was just creating the coding environment in GitHub. On to task 2. Yeah. In week 6, that was when we uploaded our files from a repository to our repository and to read a directory tree from other developers. Yes, I think last one to talk about the design.
Oh, yeah. You can just move on to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was task 3 in week 7. And yeah, so basically what we did with the Dart team, we shared design change proposals, Google Doc, in the GitHub repository, and then we had input there, and we basically decided, oh yeah, and the app development group did their part. Can you move the slide to the next one? Yeah, and we basically decided to try to have found this web page on sustainable web design. So try to, and from that we derived that as a general rule of thumb, we should have a minimalistic design to reduce environmental impact, and also, like for example, have this dark mode styling, because of this screen, it uses more energy or something when it was white. Yeah, so here we just, this is pretty much just as Gabriel mentioned, for design bits, pretty basic HTML and CSS. Yeah, I don't know if it's that much more to say about the design changes there. Like, for example, just because the other group mentioned it, here the top navigation bar, for example, this is very easy to implement. Just even if you don't have any prior experience, there are like pretty standard tutorials where you can just copy the code and yeah, you have to adjust it a little bit, but yeah, I think you should be fine. And yeah, I think that's it for me. You can take the methodology part.
Then task 4 in week 8 was about the cloud servers and safety. So the first question was, what other cloud service could be used to deploy apps from GitHub? And we found 3 options, which all can be deployed from GitHub. The Amazon one, those seem to be the most comprehensive and adopted cloud platform that we found. Then the next question was options to we would consider to get safety against attacks like password theft and abusive requests that crashes the server. So the first thing we thought of was captures on the website, which you probably know as the I'm not a robot check, so that only humans can log in. Then the two-factor authentication to avoid password theft, and also the bank ID to avoid password theft. And the last point was implementing early threat detection and traffic profiling systems to avoid distributed denial of service attacks. Yeah. And then to task 5, the last one, where we chose the methodology. So what we chose was HBEFA, which is short for the Handbook Emission Factors for Road Transportation or Road Transport, which provides emission factors for all current vehicle categories, also each divided into subcategories and for a wide variety of traffic situations. Included are emission factors for all regulated and the most non-regulated pollutants, as well as fuel and energy consumption and CO2. The reasons why we chose that methodology was that we thought it was a very valid source of detailed emission factors for different vehicle types and fuels. And it's also the emission factors that are used in the Norwegian National Inventory Report and the European Environmental Agency. And they are also factors from 2020 calculated for Norway. Yeah. Then the second question was about the further input values, and that will be covered in the app development part. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I just included a quite random picture of some of the changes to the Python codes. So I think there's some earlier changes made here if you're starting to look at specific code, but basically I'm not sure what we did was to implement the CO2 factors from the methodology. Yeah, so we just changed some of the vehicle types, or added like light duty vehicle, heavy duty vehicle, so on, and the related CO2 factors. However, one, I guess, disadvantage with our method is that it doesn't have the CH4 emissions. At least I can find it, but they have multiple other emissions in addition to CO2. But then we had to change in the Python file and remove a lot of variables relating to that, and also for the emission records to only include CO2. I think that's pretty much what we did in the Python file. Not any big changes other than what followed from the lecture, pretty much. Yeah, so you can move the slides on. Yeah, great. And so for further input values, and also on the app development part, is to include, because now we use a combination of the HBFA, the Handbook Emission Methodology, and the UK Ghg factors, where the UK ones are used as kind of a default for what is not included in the one we chose. So we should add UK factors for trains and hybrid cars. Also now, I think the only UK emission factors we use are for planes and ferries. Then also look at a methodology or just some conversion factors to get CO2 equivalents, since we had to drop the CH4 emissions. And then also our methodology has, in the same way as it has for Norway, emission factors specific for Norway. It has also for Switzerland and Germany and a couple of more countries I can't remember right now, but so include those. And also we've been talking especially about getting the GPS location to calculate distance, and then also work as automatically then identifying the country where the travel has been. So then we can switch the emission factors based on that. And also we thought of having the calculated emissions being displayed automatically while the user is filling out the form, instead of because just for I guess I forgot now, user friendliness. And then also add a methodology page, or kind of a about page, where describes the methodology more in detail, and just some more CSS and HTML changes. I mean, you can tweak it continuously, but especially we had some issues with the creating drop-down lists for some reason. I would love if you could touch on that, Gabriel, if you have any experience with it. But on the web page, created emission records. No, sorry, I looked at the web page. We created drop-down lists, which worked fine in other HTML files, but on the web page for some reason wouldn't work. It only worked when you adjusted the size, so it became small, and for some reason. Anyways, and just added the colors for the graphs on the web page, and some little things. I don't know what time we're on. I'm just talking. But that's it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also had a slide on the ups and downs, but I don't think it's in the presentation right now.
I'm looking for that right now. Yeah, I can see now. We had that, we put that out before, and then we saw that the other group has it in, so we kind of just put it back. But it is like, it's not the polished version, but I can maybe share my screen again, and then I can show you. This one just works now. Yeah, I mean, I could also just show it like that. I don't know if it's how much you can see, or if it's yeah.
I can see myself.
It's lagging a bit. Okay. Yes. So to talk more in depth about the experiences we had with the app development process, we also had some ups, like can also be fun and motivating to work in a large group and meet new people. And it's nice seeing the app coming through as a result of your own effort. And yeah, it's also nice to link the theory to the practice. And yes, like the structure of the course, basically things that that were mentioned before, and also the Monday breakfast. And some downs were that it's sometimes a bit challenging to organize the teamwork, especially in the bigger teams, for everyone to know what their task is and that stuff, and to see who's responsible. And yeah, and kind of also in the beginning, everything was a bit confusing. So it took some time to actually know how to do it, how to do everything, how it was organized. So yeah, that was not completely prepared, that slide. So yeah. Shall I leave it? Or should I stop the sharing?
Well, I think we can stop the sharing. I got the notes already. Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Great presentation, guys. I'm quite happy as well with this group. I got to say that your design already made the app better. It looks way better, to be honest. The buttons at the top, very nice detail. And touching upon that, I'd like to ask you, like, how can you briefly explain to us, like in less than 20 seconds or such, like how do you do the buttons and how do you change the stuff in order for me to identify it in your code? Because I got your code open now and checking it out.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I wrote to you earlier about the solo deployment. I couldn't get that to work. So if you're in the GitHub, you'll see a lot of commits because I had to just do it publicly to try to, well, first of all, I think for those not experienced with CSS or HTML, I don't think it requires more than a basic understanding to do the types of things that we have done, but it's kind of like a trial and fail process as well. Just see the changes, but quickly, like what we did with with the in the specific to the code, like the top navigation bar, it's basically type in how to get a responsive navigation bar, and V3 schools have tons of stuff on CSS and HTML, so I kind of like just basically copied their CSS, HTML, and then you have to link to one external style sheet that they have, and like one or two JavaScript scripts, and then you can just edit the colors and fonts and so on, like the basic things from there on. And the only thing I tried to use an external style sheet where I put all the styles and link that in each page, so it doesn't get so it's not that much code, which is like the preferred way to use it. But difficulties that we had in design was that there's a lot of back-end stuff going on, or already style sheets being used, I don't know, by you, Gabriel. So it didn't work when I used external style sheets. I had to put all the changes in each page, but it's pretty much just copy paste if you try to have a universal design. I don't know if there's the specific one with for some reason with the drop down list, because what I wanted to do was for the filtering of records, I want to have that as a drop-down list on the, you have like a section or a page that is view records, so you can just go automatically to different ones. And it worked when you like adjusted your size so it became vertically, the bars. For some reason it worked, but not horizontally.
Okay.
So, and that's, I guess also probably because of some styling or code that is there originally that I weren't able to adjust it. It was basically the same type of search, like how to get a responsive navigation bar with the drop-down lists.
Well done, well done. It looks very nice. Congratulations, guys. I'm impressed. More on that is like, okay, I now check it out on your HTML file, how you did it, and well, it seems that you put a lot of effort in it. and I'm happy for that. And it's already paying off because it looks way better. So the other thing is, like, I do believe I need to give justice to you and the graph, because the graph seems like an outlier within your page. So I will do some effort this week to make it better. So we have to keep on touch this week on how do you like to do it.
Yeah.
I just give you a hint. This is done in Plotly. Plotly is a module for Python and for R and for MATLAB. It works on any of the three. And it's basically everything can be filtered out there. And it's very responsive as well. It has like a lot of stuff that goes dynamic, and you can change background colors and stuff. So my idea is like to go just through the Plotly and adjust it to make it more connected to your website, because now it seems like an outlier. Having said so, is there any question from any students on the group 2 presentation? What about you, Mario? You got any question?
Not really. I see that this presentation complements very fine the other presentation. I think that I'm very, very happy to give the floor to all of you, because you have a lot of creativity, and it's a huge potential that you share your ideas, because this complement the work of every group. And I think this is the way of working in groups and working in society. And I think that this presentation complements very fine the other one. And the second thing is that we are going to make a break now, and the rest of the lecture is going to be for you. We will continue with the lecture, the kind of regular lecture on Wednesday, but this is very important. I'm learning a lot, and I think this is an important part of the course. Then we will have a break until 9:20. That works for you, Gabriel? You have things to do before after?
No, that's fine. That's fine. Don't worry.
Otherwise, we can do
it. We knew already that today was going to be special, so
it's fine.
Yeah, it's good
for you.
Okay.
I don't want to keep your time. Then basically we will meet again at 9:20, and then we will continue with the last group, and then after that we can have a short kind of meeting to share ideas and to think in the next steps and how to put in value your work. Okay.
Thank you. We are good to go now on group number 3.
Yeah,
we are happy to listen to your presentation.
Let me just share my screen. All right, so as you all know, we are group 3. I can see by one of your faces how excited you are to hear about our app development progress. I see you hold your questions and applause until the end, but we'll give you the brief structure of how we'll kind of form it. So we have all the group members. I'm not going to list all 13 of us because originally it was 28, but even talking about all of us is going to take a long time. And I don't know if we want to spend the next 40 minutes talking about that. We'll break it down through the first 5 tasks. Each person or persons have been assigned essentially a slide to kind of go in depth about it. And then a big chunk of our presentation is actually going to be about the methodology, both the different kinds and the specific one. Spoiler, we went with the NTM, but Jada and a few others will talk about that later. And then we'll end with the experiences, pros and cons, and questions and answers. So for week 1 or week 5, task 1, it was really about just getting started. A lot of it was setting everything up, not necessarily on the app development side, but more on the personnel side. I know Nicholas talked about how difficult it was to get people involved, but luckily Luigi was able to step up very early on and actually organize us to the best of our ability. One important thing for the app development side was getting the MIT license in. I believe that there were 3 ones that were recommended, but this was the most widely used and pretty user-friendly, so we went ahead and included that. And then we also have a link to our actual GitHub/emissions calculator, which we can either send out or provide later if needed. Week 2 or task 2 or week 6 or task 2 kind of got more in depth of what we had. We actually just had to begin using the README file more than just having it available. So both the diary team began to actually put their input, as well as the methodology team started to add their notes. Johan added the links from the files and templates from the repository. So that was nice to have on our end, because it basically gave us a starting point for everything. And then the methodology team began to really kind of figure out which would be the best methodologies to use. They didn't necessarily define or choose a specific one yet, but we'll get into that more in task 3, and then towards the end of the or middle of the presentation, where we talk about these specific ones. I believe Andre is next up to speak.
Yeah. So in week 3, the app development team's agenda was to change the color text and favicon inside the app. However, it recently turned out that the codes in the template files were not actually edited at that time, but we have solved it this weekend. So now the codes should be updated. In the diary team, they proposed different color suggestions to the app, which the app development team applied in their coding. And in order to find nice color combinations, the diary team used this, for instance, this color scheme generator coolers, and they did also get inspiration from the UN Sustainable Development Goals colors and found the corresponding HTML codes. And also, in addition, the diary team added inspirational pictures from other websites inside the README file. And the methodology group, as Dion mentioned, found 5 different methods for calculating emissions, those listed below. And they started to dig deeper into those methods and started to analyze each of them in order to decide which one to use. There was not very much information about the stream method, so we decided to rather focus on the others. And already after this week 3, we found out that the NTM and the Ecotransit method seemed to be the best match for our needs. And we will talk more about these methods later. So I guess that's it for week 4, not 3.
Week 4 was interesting on the app development side part. It was getting the app up and running. So that was nice to actually see it working. The diary team didn't have that much, answered 2 questions, looked at other cloud services to have an app up and running, and also ways to make it safer. So we looked at regarding the passwords, how to log in, and maybe a reinforced authentication. The methodology teams, they did some more research into the methodology, which we will come back to later on.
And that's just a quick, I guess, outlook of what our emissions calculator looked like as of yesterday. Didn't have a whole lot of input on our end, but it is up and running and works. So hopefully in the next coming weeks, we'll be able to add more to it. I think next up is Aiden with task 5, week 8 or something.
Yeah, so like Torvald and Andre and everybody has said, we did a lot of methodology research leading up to this point, and this was another kind of theoretical week for us. So for the diary team questions, thinking about ways to improve calculations and how to get them, some things thought about were financial costs, like cost per liter of fuel or things like that, and how do you apply that? Additionally, accessibility we felt could be relatively important. And then this is the week where the methodology team, specifically Giada Martin and those folks, really hit the ground running and came up with some methods for us to move forward with. And so without stealing too much of their thunder, the bulk of our PowerPoint is dedicated to kind of exploring where we're at on that.
So yeah, me, Martin, and Christopher, who is not here today, but he made such a great contributor to us. Basically, we went through a bunch of methodologies, and we kind of try to sum most of them because we think it's important also to understand the path that we made in order to decide which one we actually wanted to implement in the app. So yeah, as we were saying, we actually went through a bunch of them. And the first one was the Ghg protocol, which is widely used, and it is also like the framework of which, for example, the UK government is referring to. And in fact, it's just like one really wide guidelines, basically. And it is divided basically into two parts, a corporate standard and a protocol for city and nations. So when we went through this one, we understood that it is really useful if you are, for example, a private subject and you need to actually understand how to account for your emissions. But for us, for our aim of the project was too wide, also because basically we couldn't really find the conversion tables. So we went on and we checked also the Artemis method. And also this one was really nice because it was really specific. But on the other hand, since it was so specific, we just understood that maybe it was too much for our aim. And as well, we also had additional problems in finding the conversion table because most of these methods already had like sort of an app running as the one that we are actually working on. So basically it was the same. And yeah, and also we had other two methods. Sian, can you go on, please?
Yeah.
No worries. Yeah, also we check the eco-transit. The eco-transit looked like a nice one to look at because it is basically focused on transportation, and it has a great focus on the energy consumption. And in fact, it has 3 steps in which they account both for the production of energy, the use of energy into the actual process of transportation, and then a final account for the total consumption of energy at the end of the whole process. But the point is that there was, yes, a great focus on energy consumption that we didn't really know if it was suitable for our app, and also the methodology itself, it's focused on trading transport. So since we were running an app for private transportation, so consumers transportation, we noticed that maybe even if it is really sized on transportation itself, it is too much focused on the trading transport, so it is distant from what we're doing. And we also had last adding, because the USEPA calculator that we found, it is really general, and we thought it was interesting just to look at it, also because it has a really nice section about recommendations for example, reducing the footprint. But it is another basically calculator who is already running. So you can go on their website and having your emission calculated. But again, we didn't find the conversion tables available. And so that's why basically we went through the last one. This is the NTM, and I'm leaving Martin to talk about it.
Yes, so the methodology that we found the most interesting was the network for transport measures. And we thought it was interesting because it aligned well with the purpose of our app. And its aim is to establish a common base of values on how to calculate the environmental performance for various methods of transport, which seemed like a good fit for us. It's also part of the European Committee for Standardization, which felt like a quality mark, which would be nice to have. Furthermore, it specifies emission calculations for 4 different types of transport: air, rail, water, and road. And yeah, so the strengths are it's compliant with EU standards, it's easy to find conversion tables, and the possibility to compare emissions with other European cities are there as well. Yeah, so if you would go into their website, they also provide an environment performance calculator, very similar to the one we are using. And in the future, it could be interesting to also pay for a more advanced version with even more functions. So the picture here shows the basic version and the free version of it. And here is an example of the baseline for car emissions. So they have divided it into different types of categories. So for example, petrol cars and diesel cars. And they also provide which type of engine there is. So Euro 4 is a classification. And there are also, for example, Euro 5, which tells us something about the type of engine there is in the vehicle. And these baselines are based on literature reviews and expert interviews, which gives us confidence, so to say. But we have seen that there is one problem. We couldn't find any available baseline data for sea transports. And since sea transports are quite common in Norway, both in terms of larger ferries, such as Hurtigruten, but also international routes to, for example, Germany or Denmark. And we also have quite a lot of smaller ferries in Norway, which we call domestic ferries. And we have also seen that there are about to be developed electrical ferries as well. So we're currently working on gathering baseline data for each of these categories. And on the next slide, we will show, yeah, so this is our progress so far. We haven't really confirmed it, but we will try to find averages between the, for example, large ferries and the emissions per person, as well as for the smaller ferries, and finally for the electrical ones. And just to mention it, we have TTW here, which is only the emissions from the fuel and operation, so to say. And then we also have the WTW, which is including the production, distribution, and operational combustion of the fuel. So depending on the rest of the, depending on what the rest of the app uses, you could pick either of these two.
Yeah, now I come to the general conclusions and learning outcomes and pros, but also cons of the whole process and class. So let's start with the positive things. We learn how to work in big group with people from different countries. As Niklas said, it's always really stimulant and interesting to work with in a multinational environment. We had Italians, Norwegians, Swedish, American in our group, so I think it's a really good mix. Also, we learn how to manage weekly tasks because we had these weekly deadlines, which sometimes is hard to follow, but in a big group. But we've done it, so that's fine. That was all smooth. Actually, we also put in practice what we learned from the theory, so the methodology behind the ecological footprint and how to turn the theory and the numbers into an actual practice and active application to use, which is I think the most valuable learning outcome we have so far. Then obviously a basic knowledge of GitHub and Heroku, which were unknown by many of us before the beginning of the app development. And also one of the pros is for sure the great support from you, Gabriel. I think your YouTube videos were really clear and supportive, even for me, which have a really little knowledge of coding and app development. And yeah, you're always there to answer our questions, so thanks so much. Now turning to the cons, I think it was hard to manage a group of 20 people. As Stian said, I took the lead, let's say, of the group since the beginning, because we were, I think, 23, and now we are 13, so 10 people left, more or less. And it was hard to manage this whole big group, as we are not used to use Canvas to message or to send emails. So I was trying to put it in a more informal way, creating a Facebook group. But for example, it was hard to find people on Facebook or to get a reply from them. So sometimes it was hard to chat with them. And also some students left during the weekly tasks. So for example, week 1 went smooth, but then week 2, I remember a guy from the methodology or something, he just dropped the course and he didn't reply to me or whatever. So we had to reorganize the whole group and the whole roles in the process. And that, I think, is the hardest thing to do, because we are all there trying to give help, but if there are some roles defined, then you have to stick to them. But if the people are not there or ghosting, then it's hard to do the task. And then I think a bit of general confusion at the beginning. Most people, I think, were scared about the app development, especially for the coding part. And also it wasn't clear 100% what we were going to do in the following weeks. So I think many people just be more scared than us and left the thing. But then everything went clear. I mean, everything was explained, and I think all 3 groups are now running a wonderful app. So we reached the goal. That's it. Thanks for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can ask us.
All right, thank you guys. Very nice presentation. I enjoyed very much. First, I will give floor to other students, then I will add my comments. Is there any question from other students related to this app development? Well, all right. Well, first of all, congratulations, guys. I've seen in this group a very good management and overall a good development in terms of app development. Very nicely updated diary and sound extensive methodology assessment. That is also important because then it translates to a very robust app working machinery. So very good on that. I really like one of the comments. I think it was Aiden who expressed that one, and it pretty much connect with what might be the future of your app, and it's related to have information embedded from the Bergen municipality. Perhaps Mario, that's something we can discuss as well, because and perhaps you guys of group 3 can extend that question if we happen to have somebody from the Bergen Kommune. If there's any chance to have like an access to their information in order for you to improve your app. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, since it's not going to be part of the grading part of the course, you can just assess if it is possible. Like, it's not needed to go directly and develop it. Though the option is there. So that's important to take into account if we get to have the contact with the Bergen Kommune, right? Very well explained why you guys choose the NTM method. I wouldn't have think of taking it before listening to your presentation, though you make it very clear, and it does present some very good advantages in terms of the specific app. And remember that, as we discussed before, the methodology, there's not like the best methodology out there overall for every single outcome or every single app, though you can choose, as you guys did, make an assessment on what is practical for you and what is the best for you and still robust, so others can think or believe that the app is robust enough to carry out their emissions report. Remember that there are discussions out there, and perhaps we're jumping one step ahead, on monetizing the emissions, making emissions trade, and having a report on emissions based on how much emissions can I handle for a month, or how much emissions my company can handle or can use for a month, or probably how can I trade the emissions. So there's going to be a discussion, and it's getting stronger on the financial aspects of the emissions, and you guys also handle that information pretty well. So let's start thinking of how important it will be to have robust records all my emissions, because later on that will become money. So that's what the whole discussion was about, related to the methodology section, and how important it was to have a big assessment, a good assessment, as you guys did with your section. Now on, Mario, do you got any question or any comment overall on any of the presentations?
I'm really impressed by the three groups. I think that, as I told you before, I think that you complement each other. It's amazing. The methodologies that you are using is very different, and I think that you can learn from each other in that sense. And I also, every presentation kind of help to build over the other presentations. And this is very nice. I was a little skeptical at the very beginning when I decided to frame the course in this way, but I am super happy of the result. I hope that this can be useful for not only for your career, but also from a personal perspective. It's nice to do something that when the time passes, is a good memories and help you to build new experience in the future. I close this for the presentation. My objective with this, when I contact the Oslo municipality and the Bergen municipality, is like basically to integrate what you have done in their applications. It's basically when you search a ticket from going from point A to point B, it's not only relevant information how much time you will need and everything, but also to have the carbon emissions. Because if you have that information, maybe some people switch from one, maybe can walk 5 more minutes to take a ferry or to take a train instead of taking a bus and all these things. Basically, the idea is to use this application, and if it's possible, to coordinate with the municipalities, and maybe the next year we can integrate what you have done, your methodology, with the applications that they use in this municipality to work out the distance. And also because this information can help to fine-tune the policies. You can make some discounts, for example, for the people that create less emissions. You have to take into account also that not always you have different possibilities to take different transport, and you cannot penalize the people that live in poor neighborhoods. That is usually the ones that have more problems to access to clean technologies and all these things. But I think that this has been a very nice experience. The next year, I don't know if we will continue fine-tune this application, or if we will work in other applications, for example, to change electricity between the students, or to kind of organize an auction to buy renewable capacity in wind and solar energy. There are many different possibilities in many different directions in which we can move, but the general comment is that at least I have learned a lot from this. I learned a lot from Gabriel, and I learned a lot from you. And I think that 14 years ago, I developed this type of applications to pay my master, because I didn't have money to pay my master. And then I moved to Oxford to work in a consultant, and I developed these applications. Basically, I create these programs, and when we present this to companies, we have this kind of software, and basically you have an executable, and then you have all the information within the same program. In that time, for 14 years ago, I was convinced that that was the way in which we should move, and now I am more convinced of that. And I'm very, very grateful for all your work. You make this a reality, and you push a little you make the things easier for the next year, for the next students. And I think this is the objective, is that you push the limit to make that the next course or the next people go a little farther. And we help each other to progress in that sense. And I'm very grateful for all your work. We have to talk a little how to present this to the Oslo municipality, and hopefully to the Bergen municipality, to put into value all your effort and all your work, because I think this is very useful for the society. But we will come back to that. And of course, I will listen very much the suggestions that Gabriel and the suggestions that you can make to make your work very valuable. But to me, the comment is you have done great. I'm super happy.
All right, thank you very much, Mario. My final comment on this, and perhaps I'm not sure if we should continue because we have one more task that is related to the URL, task 6, meaning that perhaps we expect next week to have a breakfast meeting as we had before, the shorter version, just to wrap up the things on task 6 and overall, right? So it's we're gonna have next week. It's gonna be the last breakfast meeting for our module. If you agree with that, Mario.
Absolutely. We will do this on Monday, and then the rest of the lesson we will do this International Women's Day. But this is we will continue with the breakfast Mondays the next Monday.
Yeah.
And probably we will have another meeting, another breakfast to prepare the meeting with Oslo and Bergen municipality.
Yeah, I agree.
And we will arrange this later on.
All right. So with that said, Mario already outlined that pretty well, though I just want to make it more clear. Our main objective, and I could say my main objective was, first of all, transfer this type of technical knowledge rather than the theoretical part that Mario could give you guys. And what's important for me is so you could engage within the technical aspects of this, and you guys did pretty well. Excellent, I have to say. And the next goal is like whether this could be implemented in a real scenario, and perhaps I can have some feedback from you now. Do you think if receiving this constant feedback of emissions would make you reduce them, meaning that you as users would tend to go on lower emission transport modes if you get a constant feedback of emissions from an app? I mean, I could open the floor here. Somebody had to comment on that.
I personally think yes, because the idea is that if you, first of all, I think that right now we are more concerned about actually environmental issues than we were a couple of years ago. For example, it is always debated topic, and especially like our generation, we're actually caring really about how much we pollute, how much we consume, etc. So actually the idea that having visualizing how much you are actually, for example, polluting, consuming, it actually just push you to do better. And having something like Smart as an app, it's also easier because you can actually account for how much you are polluting. Maybe when we take a plane, we don't really think about, oh, okay, I'm polluting that much. But for example, I noticed it using, for example, like the calculation footprint for your lifestyle, that you actually, for example, if you just do it for fun, you understand how much actually you are consuming. So I personally think it has a great impact and it can actually be helpful.
Great. Yeah, I do believe so as well. Okay, so there's some concerns out there with these types of app, things like privacy. So have anybody thought about how can we overcome these type of things so more users use the app?
When you talk about privacy, you're talking about from a consumer perspective?
From a consumer perspective, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought about that for task 5 because it was part of the diary team answer. A lot of people are like pretty concerned about their information being stolen and stuff, but maybe there's a way that you either align it with a current app or just make it where you don't sign up. So like, even though you can't continually keep your own records, it's just like for maybe like the beta version or like the first entry version showing off like there's no like required sign up. You don't have to link your Facebook, Google, bank ID and all of that. It's just kind of open source technology. And then if it's successful, continue going on. If not, maybe find a better way. I think we talked about using like AWS services for security, and other groups had similar ideas like using a CAPTCHA. But we didn't have a concrete solution because it is kind of tough because not everyone thinks the same. And a lot of people are worried that, Facebook is going to take their, I don't know, social number, national number.
Yeah, there's always the risk, and you mentioned that properly. Yeah, I cannot say that this is bulletproof, meaning that even though we have everything quite close in our own environment, including databases and stuff, I cannot say for certain if the providers, for instance, can take that. And those discussions, have you have realized as being at least on the floor in the U.S. Senate, for instance, like Google has this information at their own local servers, though can they access that? While Google says that even though they can access, they have very strict protocols not to. It always gives that sense of, okay, we don't have full control of this information, and that might be risky. So there might be some workarounds, as you mentioned, things that from the developer side you guys can do in order for be like crystal clear, or at least to be closer to the 100% certain that the information, even though it's stolen, is not gonna do much harm because it's being either anonymized or the user doesn't have like a strict information related to them, these kind of things, right? So that could be some workarounds we could do.
Can I add something?
Please.
Yeah, I'm just want to report the example of what happened in Italy when COVID broke out. So basically, the government ran this application to trace the COVID cases. It was a failure, but actually it can be helpful for us since in Italy there was a huge concern about privacy and data protection. So what they have done was just you can create obviously your account to run the application, but then you are just a number at the end. So for example, if I was tested positive for COVID, then the application would just send a number to the health department or wherever, and then they at that point can coding the number into a name and a last name and a phone number. So in this case, we protect everyone's data to someone else, because we will be the only ones, or the commune will be the only one to have the key to decoding the certain codes related to each people using the app.
Wonderful. That sounds something applicable to us as well within the app.
Yeah. Thanks.
Very good.
Just to add one point, to motivate people to register or to reduce concerns about privacy, we maybe could also link the app to gamification or other incentives to just provide some advantages if you use the app, or if you share that data, for example, because it's probably data that could be helpful for a municipality in general. And if you have incentives, maybe like vouchers for restaurants, something else, if you do something, if you reduce, for example, emissions compared to last month or something else, it could be also helpful to get people on board.
Very nice. Yeah. I mean, I brought these questions because if we get the chance to talk to the municipality, I'm just going to move aside. This is going to be an interaction between you guys and them. So try to think about these questions, because this might be like real things that they might be worried about, or things that they might want to discuss with you guys that be already embedded within an app development. So it will be nice.
Gabriel.
Yep.
So this is coming from like an American perspective, where like the Times runs the daily podcast, right? And a year ago or so, I remember listening to one where like a lady got her, she somehow got her access to her data, right? And she could track where she was just based on where her phone was. And I know the US is way behind in data privacy and what companies are allowed to use, but thinking about privacy and whatever, like how realistic is that on a level like ours to like really protect this app in that way? Or is that something that we'd have to like outsource and bring somebody else in? I just don't even know what kind of lift that is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I got to be honest, I don't know. I do know the perspective of some people that are overly concerned, and some others that are under concerned. I like to say that I'm actually pretty under concerned, because sometimes I think like how important might I be for somebody just to keep up track of me, like, okay. I don't do much in a daily basis, so but still, it's something to take into account because the risk is real and it's there. The things that you could do yourself is like, okay, since we don't have the whole information, if you're an app developer, you can do things like what Luigi presented, anonymize information within numbers, or things like this is on the developer perspective. To be honest, you cannot do much on the consumer perspective because you don't have the full spectrum of how the app is developed. You don't know for real how your information is handled. And for instance, most of the times you have to put a disclaimer, right? You have to take on like, I accept the terms and conditions. And basically they said like, okay, you know what? We like dodge away from the liabilities in case something happens with your information most of the time. And basically that's to protect themselves. But at least on the developer section, things like this, anonymizing, be fair with people, be open in how your data is handled, have the information big so they know and be certain that the information is handled properly. Other than that, I have to be honest, I am not an expert on security. My background is on shipping. I used to be a shipping officer and I keep learning these things like Googling and practicing quite a lot. But at the end, it's like, okay, I keep learning and this kind of things comes into my mind time to time as well.
Yeah, that was kind of my question. Like if we were to sit down with a municipality and they were like, hey, this is great, but you have to implement this specific security protocol that fits within whatever the European standards are. I can't remember the abbreviation. Like, I mean, if they told me that, I'd be like, yeah, okay. I wouldn't even know where to start.
Well, you can, I don't know. You can always have these diplomatic answers that you learn in rhetoric, and I'm pretty sure you did in America, you did in the US, you did pretty well. So you can always have this diplomatic answer, like we'll take a look on that, and we know this, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because at the end, it will end up in a technical discussion, and that technical discussion engages people from different expertise later on as well. So things that you don't control properly, somebody else would be an expert. Yeah. Don't be afraid of working with others. That's another advice I could give on my few experience. Be open to work with others, people with other specialties also. So Mario, I think we're about time.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry I stole your whole class today, though. It's not going to happen, at least not soon, given that this is basically, I could say, the end of the module, or at least almost the end.
This has been one of the most amazing lectures in my life, and I'm very happy. And
yeah, it was all given by students.
It's amazing. It's really, it's really very, very nice how the creativity and how the people is engaged. If you give them the opportunity to do that, is amazing. We have to learn a lot from others, and especially from the students. This has been a very nice session. Probably, yeah, I will have this in my memories for a while, for sure. Then you want to say something else, Gabriel, or we close the?
No, I'm done. We can have some words on the next lecture breakfast meeting. I got some things spent in there. That's it.
Thank you so much for all your work, and we will meet on Wednesday and then on Monday for the breakfast meeting, and then the International Women's Day. Okay. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mario, one question for you.
Yeah.